Welcome everyone to the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network event, our COP30 site event. Women leading on climate justice solutions, and we're really honored to have you all here with us this afternoon. My name is Osprey Oriole, and I am the founder and executive director of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, and also I sit on the steering committee of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty and on the GARN Global Alliance Rights to Nature Executive Committee, representing all of the above. And we're really welcoming you here to be with us today for a really important conversation. And today I'm really holding the voices of generations past and the responsibility to generations yet to come. I've been thinking about that so much since we've been here at the COP about what we're doing now is making the future, and what does that mean for the generations to come. And those unborn are really counting on us. And I'm very honored to be in this work with so many remarkable women leaders, including those that are sitting here, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce them in the order that they're going to speak, and then I'm going to have some opening comments. So first we're going to be hearing from Zukiswa. She's a gender advisor and African Women's Development and Communications Network, FEMNET, from South Africa. So glad to have you here. Then we're going to be hearing from Lidia Guajajara, Indigenous climate activist and communicator from Araribóia Indigenous territory. And we're very honored to have Lidia be one of our coordinators here in Brazil. She is here. She's just circulating, and it's going to show up in a moment. We're looking for her. She'll be here in a moment. We also have Errol Derringer, President of Indigenous Climate Action, and also 2024 Climate Breakthrough Award winner from Turtle Island, Canada, and she is Athabasca Chippewa First Nation. Then we will be hearing from Gia Bastista. She's a co-founder and executive director of the Rebirth Initiative from Mexico, and she is Otomi Toltec. Really glad to have you here. Good to see you today. And then we will be hearing from Concita Sopre. She is co-founder of the National Association of Indigenous Women Warriors of Ancestry, AMIGA, really important women's mobilization here in Brazil. And we're really honored to be close partners with them. And she is co-founder of the Federation of Indigenous Peoples in the state of Pará, Brazil, where we are right now. And then we will be having a final wrap-up comments from Casey Camp-Cornick from the Ponca Nation. She is the environmental ambassador to the Ponca Nation. We're very, very honored to have her on our WECAN board and as a project coordinator. And she's also chair of the Global Alliance Rights to Nature Indigenous Council from Turtle Island. So please, let's have an applause and welcome these women coming all over the world to speak to you today. Thank you so much. So, we are not here as spectators. We are here as protectors and defenders, as movement builders for life. We are here in the heart of the Amazon, a place of immense beauty, teeming with biodiversity, while at the same time the earth is being pushed to violent breaking points. The Amazon is approaching irreversible damage, and the climate crisis is no longer a distant warning. It's a daily reality of floods, rivers, fires, famine, and forced migration. It's important to say that this is not only a crisis of carbon emissions, it's a crisis of power, of systems, of extractivism, colonization, capitalism, patriarchy, and a global community consolidating wealth while communities burn, drown, or disappear. And we need to be aware that right now, we're seeing even more of this consolidation of the wealth elite than ever before. This climate emergency is happening alongside a surge of authoritarianism. Around the world, land defenders are criminalized, activists are surveilled, and democratic spaces are closing in. So we must name this. There is no climate justice without human rights and without the power of the people. Please come on up. Your seat's right here, and thank you, Lidia. We already introduced you, but this is Lidia again, here, right here, and sit in the front of this. No. Thank you. There is no just transition without democracy. If governments silence those living the realities of collapse, they are not solving the crisis, they are deepening it. And so we are here not to adapt to injustice, but to transform it, to fight it and transform it. We are here at COP30 on Indigenous lands in the Amazon to push for justice that is real, rooted, and reparative. Women in all of their diversity across the globe are leading the charge for climate solutions grounded in care, equity, and resilience. We are not an afterthought. We are central to solutions and survival. And we are demanding that COP30 delivers. And this is something that is so important. Now, we're not here just for these speeches and listening. We have to keep our energy up to demand real change. It's not like we have a lot of time or that we have this huge future out ahead of us and have another 30 COPs. We need to be strong. We need to really have the government leaders hear from us so we can have this transformation that we know is needed. Welcome, Ariel. Thank you for making your way over. She just gave an amazing presentation. There's a chair for you there, and there's water. Thank you for coming. And we are demanding very specifically what we want. And I've been asked all last week while we were here, what is it we're fighting for? And I wanted to actually just take a minute and go through a few of these demands because we need to be very nuanced right now. We want a fossil fuel phase out. We need a fast, fair, and funded fossil fuel phase out. No new oil, gas, or coal. No more public money for destruction. Since the Paris Climate Agreement, $7.9 trillion has gone into fossil fuels. These are funds driving catastrophe. WECAN is honored to serve on the steering committee for the treaty for stopping fossil fuels, and we will urge all governments to support it now. No matter how many solar panels we install, which is very important, of course, to do, if we don't stop the root cause, fossil fuels, we will not avert the worst of climate disasters. Colombia announced that it will host the first international conference on the phase out of fossil fuels in April 2026. Let's build power here for this parallel mechanism to get fossil fuels out. We want a just transition. We must transition to renewables, but not by repeating the violence of the past. Current mining practices for transition minerals displace indigenous peoples, destroy ecosystems, and reinforce colonial patterns. We are calling for just mineral governance, for the Belém action mechanism to guide fair transition pathways, and for the UNFCCC to stop ignoring the cost of so-called clean energy. Climate action cannot be built on new sacrifice zones. So we want this new transition, but how is it being done? And who's going to benefit? And who's going to be harmed? That's what we have to look at so we don't repeat these same dangerous systems. We are rejecting false solutions, carbon capture offsets, biodiversity credits. These are distractions that let polluters profit while delaying real change. We reject market mechanisms that commodify nature and ignore justice. We demand that forests, water, and air are protected by communities, not traded in speculative markets. The Amazon and other forests are not for sale. Climate finance must serve justice. This is not about aid, it's about reparations. If anything, from my talk, I hope you walk away with is we need reparations funds, not more debt. At least 5 trillion, I repeat, trillion, not the money that's being talked about here. $5 trillion in years needed by 2035. That finance has been figured out by frontline communities and climate justice experts. That finance must be public, accessible, and grants-based, and more loans, not more loans, and no more loans, no more debt. Funds must directly go to those on the front lines, women, indigenous people, Black and brown communities. We know the money is there, such as in bloated military budgets. We need funds to be moved from death and violence to life and well-being. And people are always asking, how are we going to finance the just transition? How about taking the billions of dollars of subsidies away from the polluters, the fossil fuel industry? That's what we need to do. Take that money, it's there. Move it to the just transition. And I wanted to share that we're releasing the WECAN policy brief, Justice-Based Climate Finance for COP30 and Beyond. This is how we can get solutions into the negotiator hands. We know how to finance our way out of this mess, but it means the wealthy elite have to step aside. Feminist climate policy. Climate justice demands a feminist lens, one that centers care, community, and ecosystems over profit and militarism. We demand full implementation of the Gender Action Plan, gender responsive finance, and a seat at every table. Women's labor, knowledge, and leadership must no longer be invisible or underfunded. Indigenous sovereignty is a climate solution. This is another demand that we have. Indigenous peoples are not stakeholders. They are rights holders. Their leadership, knowledge, and sovereignty are not negotiable. COP30 must affirm free particle consent, respect treaty rights, and put Indigenous voices at the heart of decision making, not on the sidelines. We want the 1,600 polluters who are the fossil fuel industry lobbyists here out and the Indigenous people in.
Yes!
Our next demand, recognize the rights of nature. We call for a fundamental shift from extraction to interconnection, from domination to reciprocity. We call for rights of nature to be embedded in international law. Ecosystems are not resources, they are relatives. At COP30, WECAN is releasing a new policy brief to guide this essential transformation. It's called Rights of Nature as a Central Pillar to a Just Transition, because we are nature defending itself, and that's on our website. And I don't have the brief in front of me, but it's on our website. A new paper connecting rights of nature as a pillar to the just transition. We need to transform nationally determined contributions. Incrementalism is a failure. We call for ambitious, justice-centered NDCs that align with the 1.5C pathway and center human rights, gender equity, and Indigenous leadership. I'm done hearing this conversation and we can't get to 1.5. If we keep the door open, we can be at 1.5. Don't tell island nations and frontline communities that 1.5 is off the table. It's only off the table because the polluter and the wealthy elite don't want it. We're keeping it in.
Yes.
The International Court of Justice recent advisory opinion moves climate into the legal realm. Legal. Governments can no longer hide behind politics. Law is catching up with morality, and now action must catch up with both. So we have legal precedents to fight for the 1.5 guardrail. And as we all know, we are in a decisive moment. The window for action is closing, but we are not here to warn the future. We are here to claim it. We are here to claim our future. We are not asking for permission. We are building power. Are we in this together?
Yes!
And all of you here, your courage is our fuel. Your honesty is our oxygen. Your action is the sunlight. And it is so good to be together in this fight for our precious earth. Together we're drawing a red line. No more sacrificed people. No more sacrifice zones. And we unite not just in resistance, but in our collective vision, in our collective imagination together. From the forests of the Amazon to the streets of every city, rising in resistance. This is our time. This is our movement. This is our earth. And we will not back down. Thank you. And now I'm honored to hand the floor to my dear colleague, Zukiswa White.
Thank you so much for that inspiring opening. As always, indeed, no more sacrifice zones and no more sacrifice people. Good afternoon, friends, comrades, and allies. My name is Zukiswa White, and I bring greetings from the African Feminist Climate Justice Movement from the Africa Climate Summit to in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to Maputo in Mozambique, where 60 or so of us gathered for the third feminist COP, a space imagined as a necessary and alternative co-creation and organizing space to strategize and re-energize, where we left firmly with the premise that the necessary and urgent work of decarbonization cannot happen without decolonization, that there can be no transition without social and economic justice, and that climate justice without gender justice fails at the source. And for the past week, we have been here despite the barriers that deny us our meaningful participation. But we are here once again in these negotiating halls in Belém, where we continue to hold the line. We gather in this decisive second week of COP30, carrying a mandate that is clear. Women and indigenous communities are not just on the front lines of the crisis. We are also building the solutions and providing the very necessary leadership. But those solutions demand transformation, not tweaks to the system that is killing us. Let me be clear about what women not leading solutions on the front lines actually means for African women and indigenous people right now. It means 600 million Africans are without electricity and nearly 1 billion without clean cooking, not because of scarcity, but because of extraction. The same colonial systems that drained Africa of her wealth for centuries now want to offer us loans to cope with the climate crisis we didn't create. It means that of the 77% funding deficit that the continent has, 80% of this money arrives as debt, as loans. We are told to adapt to floods and droughts while paying interest to the very countries whose emissions caused them. This is not climate finance. This is structural violence. This is pervasive coloniality, extraction disguised as charity and goodwill. It means women, environmental human rights defenders like our sisters here are criminalized, surveilled, and attacked for protecting the land, water, and forests that sustain life. We saw last week when our comrades from the Amazon tried protesting what happened. While we speak of women-led solutions, women land defenders are being murdered for implementing them. What women not leading on the front lines means is women's care work, the labor that sustains communities through crisis, that keeps children fed when crops fail, that tends the sick when health systems collapse, remain completely invisible in every just transition plan and climate policy being negotiated in these halls. This is unacceptable. So what are the solutions that we are leading? Let me name them clearly because they are already happening, they have been happening, with or without the recognition of negotiators in this building and those who claim to represent us. We are building community-owned renewable systems, not because governments are prioritizing them, but because women organize to take power into our own hands, decentralized, democratic, decolonial, and designed to serve our communities, not corporate profit. We are practicing agroecology and defending food sovereignty, preserving seed diversity, regenerating soil, feeding our communities without fossil fuels or corporate control. While negotiators debate agricultural emissions, African women are proving another food system pathway possible. We are also documenting traditional knowledge and indigenous practices, again, not for extraction by corporations seeking patents, but as living systems of care for land and water that have sustained life for millennia. We are organizing across movements, from climate movements to feminist justice movements, to feminist organizing, from labor rights to land defense, because we know that these struggles are inseparable, that there can be no climate justice without gender justice, no decarbonization without decolonization, no just transition without social and economic justice. These solutions exist, they work, they are feminist, decolonial, and rooted in care rather than extraction. What's missing is not women's leadership or the leadership of indigenous people. It is the political will and the resources to scale what we're already doing. What brings me to what must happen this week if COP30 is to be fit for purpose. First, we are calling, as African feminists, the establishment of the Belém Action Mechanism under the Just Transition Work Program. After COP29 failed to adopt a decision on the just transition, we cannot afford more dialogue without delivery. The ban must provide technical assistance, facilitate knowledge exchange, and match countries with grant-based finance and ensure meaningful participation of women, indigenous peoples, workers in its design and governance. Second, we are calling for the delivery of reparative, ambitious climate finance, delivered as grants, not loans. Stop counting debt instruments as climate finance, and the cancellation of illegitimate debt for climate vulnerable countries immediately. The simplification of accreditation so that grassroots women's organizations can access funds directly without prohibitive barriers designed to exclude us. Thirdly, we are calling to make the enhanced gender action plan redistribute power and not just rhetoric. Land rights for women and indigenous communities everywhere in the global south and unceded nations in the north alike. Care economy integration into every climate policy. Binding protections for environmental human rights defenders. Gender responsive budgeting that shows actual resource allocations to community priorities and not vague mainstreaming languages. We are tired of coming here every day to fight dictionary definitions. Parties to the UNFCCC must champion these demands while creating national pathways that guarantee women's decision-making power, not merely consultative participation, but actual control over planning and resources. Comrades, we arrive at COP30 after a decade of broken promises since Paris. We have seen enough. We are no longer asking for a seat at a table designed to exclude us. We are asking for fundamental decolonial systems change and transformation of who holds power, who controls resources, and whose priorities actually shape climate action. The solutions are here in these rooms, in our communities. The question is whether this COP will resource or recognize them, or whether we continue building them despite that. Because this transition will be feminist, rights-based, and just, or it will fail. Whether they recognize or resource, women will continue leading. Africa and the world at large, as I close, cannot afford another generation of rhetoric and commitments. No decarbonization without decolonization. No decarbonization without demilitarization. No just transition without economic and social justice. No climate justice without gender justice and human rights. No climate justice on colonized and occupied lands. We will win. We have history and humanity on our side. We will not relent nor give in. We will win. Thank you. Obrigada. Asante sana.
This is working. Yeah. Thank you so much, Zukiswa. Really appreciate your comments. So we're going to take a few minutes to actually watch a video. And the reason we're showing this is we wanted to demonstrate, and there's many others, this is just one of many, 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 many projects on the ground that are led by women, that are not funded through carbon markets, that don't have anything to do with carbon offsets or biodiversity credits, by directly ensuring that communities have the funding to care for their forests. So let's go ahead and show the video, and then we'll hear from Lidia. Thank you.
Deep in the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest, indigenous women of the Seriaco community are taking action to protect their territories and communities, one seed at a time.
Yo pienso que es algo que es único, un trabajo con mujeres, reforestando, regenerando, organizándose, generando también recursos a través de eso, proponiendo nuevas alternativas, recuperando todo lo que está perdiéndose.
WECAN has been honored to be working in partnership with Indigenous women leaders in the Sariao community for many years, which has led to this thriving forest protection and reforestation project.
This project is helping to protect and restore over 135,000 hectares of rainforest in the Amazon.
We know that healthy global forests are absolutely vital to mitigating the worst impacts of both the climate and biodiversity crises, and the Amazon rainforest is critical in this global effort, as are the indigenous women of the Amazon.
The Amazon rainforest is the most biodiverse ecosystem and largest forest on Earth. Yet, the Amazon is at a critical tipping point and faces severe threats of mining, extraction, and industrial expansion, driving rapid deforestation, biodiversity extinction, and the climate crisis. Indigenous women are successfully reforesting and protecting forests, guided by the Sariako initiative of Kausak Sacha, the Living Forest Declaration.
Kausak Sacha es la búsqueda de un reconocimiento de que la naturaleza, la selva, es un ser vivo consciente y por lo tanto sujeto de derechos.
Las mujeres están muy emocionadas porque son las que realmente cultivan la tierra. También les permite estar muy activas y ser reconocidas como guardianas de esta reforestación, de estas selvas, y es un trabajo en las que estamos muy emocionadas.
La mujer indígena se conecta con la naturaleza a base de prácticas tradicionales que nosotros tenemos. La mujer indígena desde hace mucho tiempo ha venido correlacionándose con la tierra, con el aire, con la selva mismo. Es una conexión muy profunda que nosotros tenemos, ya que todo lo que nos rodea es energético y nos conserva. Nosotros dependemos de ella y ella depende de nosotros.
We host trainings on women's leadership, reforestation, advocacy, and land defense to support a healthy forest. Women participants travel deep into the jungle to gather over 100 species of native trees that are in danger of going extinct. These trees are central to Amazonian ecological integrity, waterways, and culture of the Sariako community.
Y manteniendo nuestras prácticas tradicionales de seguir reforestando árboles y plantas que están ya en peligro de extinción en otros pueblos, para de esta manera conservar el territorio libre y sano de otras actividades extractivas.
Las mujeres de Sarayaku se encuentran muy contentas porque se sienten que están aportando directamente a la conservación. Como mujeres y madres también están compartiendo el conocimiento con sus hijos.
This project also includes advocacy at international forums, where the forest solutions and expertise of Sariako women leaders are amplified on the global stage. As governments and corporations continue to advocate for false solutions that commodify nature, such as carbon credits, carbon offsets, and biodiversity credits, this project is offering a successful, scalable strategy outside of these market-based mechanisms. This work is generated at the grassroots level and protects and restores forests damaged by colonization and extractive industries, and tackles the core drivers of the climate and biodiversity crises.
La reforestación con WECAN y con el enfoque femenino nos permite hacer que esa fortaleza que tienen las mujeres se plasme en una reforestación diferente, que esté absolutamente acorde a los principios de los pueblos indígenas y a la visión de la selva viviente.
Technology. The thing I wanted to share that was about to be said is that that this project is not part of these market mechanisms, and the next part of the video talks about that, because that is a critical reason that we're doing this project in this way, to show women's leadership working on the land, and to specifically show non-market-based mechanisms for how this work can be done. And I'll leave it at that, and let's move on because I have no idea what's going on in the video. You can see it, the rest of it on our website. With that, I would like to hand the floor to Lidia Guajajara. Please, you have the floor to speak. And we're going to do consecutive translation, so I'll let you two work that out together down there. Thank you.
Primeiramente, bom dia, meu idioma, sou do povo interrário, como apresentada, eu sou a Lidia.
So first and foremost, good morning in my language. I'm from Guajajara people, and my name is Lidia.
Também, além de liderar um projeto de reflorestamento do meu território, também trabalho com comunicação, sou comunicadora, que é esse meio que a gente tem usado para passar essa mensagem das mulheres.
And apart from leading a reforestation project in my territory, I'm also an Indigenous communicator, and we have a communication network across our territories.
E atualmente nós estamos desenvolvendo um projeto de reflorestamento com 20 mulheres no meu território, que é liderado também por mães, jovens, crianças, que a gente acaba envolvendo toda a comunidade.
And currently we have a reforestation project in my territory with over 20 women that we are moving amidst women, from the youth to the elders, and various people that are working collectively in our community.
E historicamente, como bem sabemos, as mulheres já desenvolvem esse papel do trabalho que é de cuidar da terra, de cuidar das florestas, e é nesse momento que a WECAN entra para apoiar esse projeto, uma ação que já existe no nosso território.
And historically, as we all know, women have been responsible for the carrying of the land, the carrying of the territory, which is something that we haven't been doing, and that's also where WECAN has joined forces with us on this initiative.
Quando nós falamos desse apoio, não é sobre necessariamente, além da reparação histórica, que a gente sabe que a gente precisa ser visto e ouvido, bem como também uma solução, não só do nosso povo, mas de modo geral, para todas as pessoas e para o planeta. Então, esse projeto, quando ele chega, a gente já sabe, já tem aquelas ações feitas e elas já vêm com um impacto positivo no território, porque em pouco tempo nós já vemos um resultado muito gigante, muito transformador, não só na parte do reflorestamento, mas também na parte que as mulheres ali também estão sendo inseridas politicamente. Então, vai muito além do reflorestamento.
And so when we speak about receiving support, it doesn't only talk about reparations and historical reparations, but it also talks about something that supports us in conducting this work. And in little time that we've been receiving support for our initiative, we can see that this generates immense results. And this is something visible within our community.
E são oportunidades como essa que nos permite chegar aqui para dizer que sim, nós temos soluções. A gente já sente na pele essa mudança do tempo, principalmente em relação à realização dos nossos rituais. Então, não faz sentido ser povo, não faz sentido estar no território se a gente não tem aquela garantia que é para a gente manter a identidade. Então, isso impacta diretamente o nosso modo de vida.
And so, for us, when we see this immense change take place already, we see that, for example, climate change is already felt in our territory. Also in regards with how do we conduct our ceremonies, our traditional practices, our rituals. And for us, it's something fundamental, it's a fundamental part of our cultural identity, how we engage with the territory and how are we able to continue our practices through being able to care for it.
E é através disso que a gente já entende que a mudança ela também acontece no reflorestamento. Então, se a gente refloresta aquelas áreas, a gente continua mantendo a nossa língua, a nossa tradição, o nosso modo de vida. E, para além disso, a gente também mantém a vida dos povos ali no nosso território e de toda a comunidade, de todo o planeta. Então, a gente sabe que essas pequenas ações, esses pequenos projetos fazem diferença. Não só no território, vai muito além do território.
And so it is through reforestation that we actually observe change taking place. It is through reforestation that we observe how our lives, our traditional practices, our traditional ways of being are able to continue. And this change is not only felt within our territory, but it's actually change that is taking place on behalf and for the whole planet.
Eu acredito que a gente ainda tem pouco tempo, mas Basicamente, esse projeto ele veio mesmo para fazer essa mudança. Então, o reflorestamento ele começa, na verdade, para manter a nossa cultura, ele começa com essas ações. Então, são pequenos projetos que fazem a diferença. E essas oportunidades que a gente tem aqui é para dizer que sim, é uma solução que em pouco tempo, inclusive, aproveito para compartilhar com vocês a WECAN. Ela chegou no nosso território com uma missão e com algumas metas.
And so it is through, it may seem like a small project, but this reforestation project is one example of how one small initiative can really make a difference. And speaking about this, I would also like to mention how WECAN has come together to support us. And in such a small time, we can see the difference that it's generating.
Em pouco tempo, em menos de 5 meses, como eu falei, as mulheres já lideram esse papel há muito tempo, mas a WECAN chegou de uma forma para fortalecer ainda mais esse projeto que já existe.
So in just 3 months, just about 3 to 5 months that we've been receiving the support from WECAN for this reforestation initiative, we can see already how this has enhanced the quality of our practices and the ways of living.
A gente tinha como meta reflorestar uma área com mudas, plantando algumas mudas tanto frutíferas quanto palmeiras, que é uma meta de 50 a 70 mil, e hoje nós temos mais de 90 mil mudas plantadas em solo. Então, esse é um gigantesco resultado em pouco tempo.
So we started off with the objective to plant about 50,000 saplings, and in such short time we actually have over 90,000 saplings that have been planted already.
Basicamente é um pouco que eu compartilho com vocês. A gente tem pouco tempo, mas a gente gostaria de ter trazido imagens também, de falar um pouco do projeto das mulheres, né, para a gente mostrar essa diferença que tem sido no nosso território para além do reflorestamento, como eu falei. E isso traz a participação das mulheres, traz a formação de mulheres, né, falando politicamente. Então, o WECAN tem feito esse trabalho em conjunto, fortalecendo a ação que já existe.
So I wish I would have brought some pictures and videos for you to see the difference and how much we were able to grow in such short time. But that is just to say that with the support of WECAN, we also see not only how this is benefiting the land, but how this is benefiting the women in the community as it involves their participation. It also creates training and technical formation for these women to engage with such projects.
E em nome dessas mulheres, dessas jovens, também agradecer por esse espaço, são oportunidades como essa que permite chegar a nossa voz aqui e dizer que a gente está também à disposição para fazer a transformação em conjunto e a gente conta com o apoio de todos vocês.
So on behalf of all the women and the young women in my community, it is a great joy and an honor to be able to be in these spaces, and we're here to say that we hope to also join forces to continue working on such projects and such initiatives together with all.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you, Lidia, through this work, and we're really honored to be, working collectively in many different spaces on reforestation, forest protection, and showing a different model of how this work can be done. Because there's gazillions of conversations and dollars going on around all of these different mechanisms, like the TFFF that we've been hearing about, and many others from RED Plus have been going on for years. And we know there can be a different way where Indigenous communities are benefiting directly from caring for their lands. And this is why I keep saying reparations funds. This is money that's owed from those who've been extracting and polluting and colonizing these spaces for a long time. So I'll end there because we want to now hear from Ariel Derajay. Please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Masintro, thank you so much. Eklanete, Dennis Wotlane Tair, Ekwebushe, Duranje Betsini Hiswi. I just introduced myself in my Indigenous language, which is Dene or Dene Sotlane from Northern Canada in Alberta. I think when we think about the issue of climate and gender and Indigenous rights and the nexus of those three, we have to understand what's at stake. The ongoing climate crisis is threatening the rights, lives, and livelihoods of Indigenous peoples at a disproportionately higher rate than other sociocultural regions and groups. While climate change impacts us all, Indigenous peoples globally have been systematically excluded in decision-making, economic and technological advancements and innovation spaces, and our knowledge is co-opted, appropriated, or devalued. We have also witnessed this here at this COP, where hundreds, thousands of Indigenous peoples from Brazil have been excluded from these spaces because they do not have the appropriate accreditation to enter in. Yet they are being impacted by the solutions and the negotiations that are happening here. Additionally, Indigenous peoples still face mounting pressures, manipulation, and overlapping political and economic interests seeking to either protect our lands and nature or exploit our lands and nature and our territories. And Indigenous peoples' lives are under threat from harmful extractive industries, and when we stand up against these industries, our lives are also at risk. The IPEP's report in 2019 stated that 212 people were killed for taking a stand against environmental destruction. Over 40% of them were Indigenous. Indigenous peoples are also at risk because of inadequate recognition of our rights and our governance systems and a lack of political and legal supports to advance our rights. But let's talk about the nexus of where women come in and Indigenous rights a little bit more. First off, Indigenous peoples only receive less than 1% of global philanthropy for our work. Less than 1% of philanthropy goes towards Indigenous peoples. This is why Indigenous peoples have been fighting for recognition and adequate financing within the discussions here. When we only receive less than 1% and yet we steward and protect 25% of the land mass on planet Earth, and we receive less than 1% of climate finance, there is a problem. When there is 1 in 25 delegates here at the COP space are oil and gas lobbyists, that is a problem. We need to be doing more to support those that are not just at the forefronts of climate change and the disasters on the ground, but they're also at the forefronts of innovation. Just this year, a report was released on a global study on Indigenous peoples' climate contributions that documented over 700 Indigenous-led climate innovations on the ground. And what they found is that Indigenous peoples are safeguarding biodiversity, stewarding lands and water, driving mitigation, and strengthening resilience, and yet our contributions are obscured, co-opted, and appropriated by colonial states, and we still have no funding. When it comes to Indigenous women, what we're also finding that there is a huge gap. And while we know that funding for women is inadequate, what we're also seeing is that of the funding that supports women and girls, only 1.4% of it goes directly to Indigenous women. This is absolutely despicable, considering Indigenous women actually have even more contributions. It's not just Indigenous peoples. They have found that when Indigenous women are leading projects on the ground, that it consistently reports stronger food security, faster innovation uptake, and higher cultural transmission. Indigenous women are leading on the ground in our communities, and yet we are not just receiving not enough climate finance, there is not enough funding to directly support Indigenous women and girls. Why is this important in the context of the discussions here? Right now, in the negotiations, as they're talking about developing climate just transition strategies, they're talking about replicating the same systems of extractivism, where we're talking about rare earth mineral mining, mega hydro development, and other false solutions that continue to replicate systems of colonial harms. It is Indigenous women that continue to be on the forefront of those extractive industries and where their lives are literally at risk. In my territory, we have the largest industrial project on planet Earth, the Alberta tar sands, that have seen men camps come into our lands and territories where thousands of men from other parts of the country and the world come, and what we have seen is an uptick in sex trafficking, sexual violence, and harm against women and girls. This is replicated everywhere that we see extractivism continue to proliferate. So we must not just demand that there is more funding for Indigenous peoples, but we need to have more funding for Indigenous women and girls to protect their lives, and we must demand that new systems for a just transition do not replicate the same systems of extractivism and violence on our lands and women. The biggest threat, though, to actualizing Indigenous-led climate solutions and land rights is ongoing systems of colonization, inadequate funding and support, and lack of opportunities for Indigenous peoples to enter into these spaces, and also a lack of dissemination of critical information directly to our communities. We are violating free, prior, and informed consent every time we exclude Indigenous peoples from the innovations and the solutions that are being negotiated in these spaces. While there are growing resources being made available to Indigenous communities and climate and conservation projects, they still remain severely underfunded, with even less funding going directly to our communities. A majority of the funding earmarked for Indigenous peoples continues to be put through multilateral banks or through intermediaries that take a huge portion of that funding that does not go directly to us. We don't need intermediaries. We don't need multilateral banks. We need people to trust that we're already doing the solutions that everyone so desperately needs. I want to end that while we have all these impressive stats and figures that prove Indigenous peoples are leading the way in innovation, that Indigenous women and girls are leading the way in innovation, we don't understand the total impacts of these movements because of a lack of coordinated research by and for Indigenous peoples from the communities at a global scale. Indigenous climate models remain devalued, underrepresented, underfunded, and relegated to the sidelines of formal colonial negotiations and decision-making spaces. And this is largely due to the ongoing failure to adequately recognize and implement the rights of Indigenous peoples. No negotiations should happen without Indigenous peoples at the table. If we are not at the table, then we're on the menu. It is clear that Indigenous lands and territories, both our forests and our soils, not just our great forests. I come from the Arctic with peatlands and beautiful sand dunes. These are all critical. They play a critical role, but there remains an ongoing challenge to advance our legal rights for governance on these lands and territories. We must demand land back for Indigenous peoples. We must demand land back for Indigenous women and girls and move towards true climate justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel, and I hope it's all right for me to say that. Also, Ariel was a winner of the 2024 Climate Breakthrough Award, and we got to hear earlier today an amazing project that she's putting together called Woven. So you can check that out online. Congratulations on that effort and for the beautiful project you're putting forward. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Jay Pasita. You have the floor, Jay.
Hello, thank you so much, Osprey, for the space that you have created for us. Hello, everybody. My name is Shia Bastida, and I'm a climate justice activist from the Otomí Indigenous community in Central Mexico. I have been doing activism for a long time. This is my 6th COP. The first time I went to a COP, I was 17 years old. And I think that's really sad, right? I've grown up literally in the halls of negotiations, knowing Osprey since the very beginning, and I just want to say that she has been an incredible support for all of us who come for the first time and don't know where we are or what we're doing. So thank you for that. My parents met in Rio in the Earth Summit in '92. And now 33 years later, I'm here continuing the legacy. And that's really important. We're not building our climate diplomacy intergenerationally. We did a quick survey a few years ago on the negotiators' age, and over half were not going to be seeing the results of what they're negotiating. If we don't have continuity in those processes, then we are inherently living out the generations that are going to be inhabiting the world that is being spoken of today. I want to just share a few things that I've learned in these past few days, seeing that this COP is in the Amazon. One is agribusiness is responsible for 80% of the deforestation in the Amazon. Our food system is broken. It's not just fossil fuels, it's also our energy system, our food system, our fashion, everything. Every capitalism has been really creative in how to mercantilize nature and how to extract value off of killing Mother Earth. And we need to be smarter than that. Capitalism is like a disease that is taking root and damaging our roots, but it's also a really new system. It's a system that has been around for less than 500 years. And indigenous knowledge, indigenous wisdom will survive. What we need to decide now is how fast do we have never seen as much military and police presence as in COP30. And I want to make that really clear. We are all being criminalized for defending Mother Earth. Not just indigenous peoples in our lands continuously, but also everybody who is at COPs trying to push forward a climate agenda that is just. If you had to walk through the COPs, if you had to walk to the COP venue and were surprised by the amount of police presence and military presence, raise your hand. Had anybody seen anything like this before?
Yeah. Here.
Here.
At other COPs.
At other COPs.
In our land.
In lands, in extractivist projects, in dams, there's always military presence. They're protecting the extractivist projects and also protecting the system from us, the people who should decide how our futures are built. And so now we're all witnessing what frontline communities see all the time. We're seeing what it's like to have to walk a little faster and have to hide your face and look down because you don't want to be harmed. Now imagine living under that surveillance, under that violence throughout the year. Imagine raising kids in that environment. And knowing that, as Oscar said, the budgets for the military, for police presence, are enough to cover the just transitions that we need. And the reason why I also bring up just transitions is because it's not only just our energy system. Like I mentioned before, it's food, fashion, finance, and we have the right to dream of different futures, where we all have a future that is grounded in our lands. And that's why autonomy for indigenous communities is one of the most important climate solutions. And not all global governance systems are going to work in our lands. They have to be adapted to how we're going to show up. And knowing that indigenous communities are creators of biodiversity, are stewards of life. We don't want to be defenders anymore. We want to be stewards. At COP26, I gave a speech at the closing of the World Leader Summit, which wasn't even here this year at the same time as the COP. They did it before, probably because they didn't want us to interact with the presidents that were going to come. They want us to separate us even more and more. And in that closing, I asked, how many COPs do we need to actually start implementing climate justice throughout the world? And today we ask, how many more lives? How many more territories? How many more cultures and how many more languages need to be sacrificed for us to realize that the system is broken? We need to go beyond also just calling out what's wrong and knowing that the solutions already exist. When this company is going to indigenous territories and say, we have the solutions, that is also saying or alluding to the fact that, or to the idea that our practices are broken and they're not. Coming to a new territory and saying I'm bringing a solution is saying what you have doesn't work and it does. So when we talk about indigenous land stewardship, about milpa, about all of the different ways in which we have of relating to the land, that is a way of living in balance with the earth. and that is already a proven solution over thousands of years. The last thing I will say is that we are witnessing how the co-presidency, how countries are still creating systems of loopholes that protect them, that create money and richness for those who have already historically extracted land. And they want us to keep selling our forests, to keep selling our land, so that they can go on with their development of their economy and their definition. And we are here to say that our land will not be sold, our rivers will not be sold, that our communities are not up for profit. We're here to defend our right of autonomy and stewardship. And future generations, this generation, we know that really clearly. And we will keep showing up, we will keep being here to keep raising that voice, so that everybody who has been working in this system for 15, 30 years in the COP system, trying to push for better, know that the next generation is rising up as well. That we have very clear that the system is broken and we will not allow this system to continue on. And my hope is that in my lifetime, we see the system change, so that future generations can be proud of the ancestors we are becoming. Thank you.
I just find it completely unacceptable and outrageous that our youth are experiencing this injustice, and to grow up having to fight so hard to live, and that we have to fight our governments to live is insane. It's insane. And so I'm listening to your brilliance and your spirit and your fight and all the energy you have for years since your youth. And I just want to thank you so much for your leadership, and also to say we're here for you. And I want to see this in your lifetime too, but also just to share the grief and their outrage and the anger of how absolutely wrong this is.
Yes.
It's just wrong.
Yes.
We don't need to make it more complicated than that. So thank you for your words, and we will continue. We will continue.
Absolutely.
And to hear those solutions that are already there, which makes it even more insane. With that, I'm very honored to have Concita Sopre with us, and it's really special to have both Lidia and Concita here, because we're here in Brazil, we're on indigenous lands, and so I want to particularly thank both of you for having us in your territories here. Thank you, Concita, you have the floor.
Boa tarde a todos. Sou Concita Sopre, sou amazônica, sou do estado do Pará. E estou aqui hoje para dizer a todos vocês que estão aqui que até o teu silêncio é uma forma de contribuir para tudo isso que está acontecendo no mundo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Concita Sopre. I'm a woman from the Amazon and from the state of Pará. And I'm here to say that even your silence is contributing to everything that's taking place around the world.
Mas quando o mundo se cala, as mulheres se levantam em defesa da Mãe Terra, porque somos as filhas e guardiãs desse planeta.
But when the world is silent, it is the women who stand up and rise to speak for Mother Earth, for we are the daughters and the guardians of this planet.
Eu acho que vocês já ouviram falar no decorrer dessa COP que nós somos os guardiãs, que nós temos conhecimentos ancestrais milenários, que nós somos a resposta para tudo isso.
I believe you probably heard around in this COP the ideas that we are the guardians, that we are the solution, that our ancestral knowledge dates back to thousands of years.
Mas você já se perguntou se isso é verdade? Se você acredita? Ou você acha que isso é só uma frase de efeito?
But have you really asked yourself if you actually believe this? If this is actually true to your ears? Or does this just sound like slogan words that are said around?
Porque estar aqui hoje, dentro de uma COP, com essa credencial que também tem a cor diferente, eu gostaria de estar com aquela cor, aonde está sendo feitos os acordos, acordo das partes que chamam.
But because for me to be here today inside COP, having this specific badge with a specific color, and it's also a different color than the color of the people that actually get to be in the negotiations, and this is the color of the badge that I would like to have.
Se é uma conferência das partes, a minha parte, que indígena, não está dentro. Nós temos cientistas também para contribuir, mas ninguém quer nos ouvir.
If this conference is called the Conference of the Parties, then I say that my part as an Indigenous woman is not being included in this conversation. We also have scientists that have contributions to give and that are also not being heard.
De falar para eles que as nossas mulheres indígenas continuam sendo estupradas, aonde o garimpo tem invadido as terras, de falar para eles que as nossas mulheres têm sido impedidas de gerar filhos pela contaminação do mercúrio nas águas.
And we're here to bring the message that our Indigenous women are still facing sexual harassment and rape in regions where mining companies are entering our territories. Some women are also no longer able to give birth due to mercury contamination that is entering the rivers where they live by.
O Brasil foi invadido há 525 anos. Nós chegamos em 2025 com uma população de 1.600.000 indígenas. Mas esses conhecimentos lá de 2.500 continuam mais vivos e mais reais do que antes. Isso é fazer a relação entre o homem e a natureza.
Brazil was invaded about 500 years ago, and yet today we only have about over 1,200,000 indigenous peoples in Brazil. And yet the practices, our presence in the territories remains as strong as ever.
A conferência fala que nós temos que discutir como aprender a viver com essas mudanças. Eu me nego, como mulher, de ter que conviver com algo que não faz parte da minha vida. Viver sem água, viver sem terra, viver sem os modos de vida tradicionais do meu povo. Isso é negar o direito da existência das pessoas, do ser humano. E isso não está sendo negociado pelo meu povo, mas está sendo negociado pelas partes que estão aqui hoje.
This conference often talks about the need to be able to accept the changes that are coming, that are part of this crisis. But I refuse to accept some of these changes. For example, to live without water, to live without land, to live without the right to practice our traditional ways of living. I refuse to accept that, and this is not being included in the negotiations that are taking part in.
Nós temos construído proposta para uma melhor qualidade de vida e as mulheres têm feito isso. Nós defendemos os nossos territórios, somos guardiãs, vamos para a linha de frente, enfrentar os madeireiros, garimpeiros, as pessoas que têm invadido nosso território, colocamos nossa vida e nosso corpo, somos criminalizadas, somos mortas. A Alessandra veio aqui como mulher. Ela veio aqui, entrou dentro desta COP, onde era negado o direito de entrar. É uma mulher. Que vocês nunca esqueçam esse rosto.
And so we women have been putting our bodies on the front lines of this conflict to speak out against the violence that's being committed to our territories and to our bodies. And yet, we continue to be ignored from these conversations. Alessandra was a woman that came all the way here, and I hope you all remember this name. She was a woman that was a part of, on the front line with us, and she was denied entrance.
Eu tenho muito para falar, mas o tempo é pouco. Eu sou uma mulher, estou na linha de frente da Articulação Nacional das Mulheres Indígenas. Eu quero contar só um episódio para vocês, que eu fui uma das mulheres que arrumei minha barraca de praia, de campo, que vocês chamam, no dia 7 de setembro, quando decidi me levantar para não morrer. Não era da Covid, não. Era do governo Bolsonaro. Eu levei minha filha, que tinha, na época, ela tinha 7, 8 anos. Quando aqueles caras resolveram rodear nossos acampamentos, dizendo que ia nos matar, que os indígenas deviam ser mortos. Ela olhou para mim e disse: mãe, você me trouxe para morrer aqui. Eu disse: nós vamos morrer. Mas nós vamos morrer acreditando que a defesa do nosso território é muito maior do que esse sistema que quer nos destruir.
I'm a woman that works at the front lines of this conflict. I'm a part of Lidia, and I'm here to also, I remember the day, it was during the Bolsonaro government on the 7th of September, that I rose and I took my campaign tent and I went together with my daughter to Lidia to protest against, at the time it was it wasn't against COVID, it was against Bolsonaro government's practices against our territories and against our rights. And I remember my daughter telling me, Mom, you brought me all the way here for us to die. And I told my daughter, if we are going to die, we are going to die here by protecting and defending the rights of our territories. Because this is truly what I believe in.
Eu finalizo meu tempo dizendo o seguinte: hoje ela tem 14 anos e está comigo aqui na COP. E ela disse: mãe, você é a melhor mãe. O que você faz, eu quero continuar. E é isso. Me deixa feliz saber que outras mulheres virão depois de mim. Me deixa feliz saber que a semente que eu estou plantando vai ser a semente que vai continuar lutando pelo direito à vida. Nós só queremos ter direito à vida. Muito obrigada.
So I've been here since 14 years, and my daughter often tells me, Mom, you're the best in the world for the work that you're doing. And I'm just grateful and honored to know that this is the work that we're doing on behalf of life. What we're doing here is for the right of life itself. We're planting seeds of life. And this is what I hope that is the message that will continue for the next generations to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Conchita, and thank you for your courage and your determination, and also, you know what, being a great mom, being a really good mom. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership and your incredible courage. Obrigado. And now we will hear from Casey Camp Hornick from the Ponca Nation. You have the floor, Casey.
Thank you. The first thing I have to go to is this water, to take a drink of water and to hold it in my hand and ask for help at a time like this. And it helps me. And I want to say thank you to the water as well. I want to say thank you to the women over here whose homeland we're sitting on right now, that we're talking on, that we're learning from you about. And I want to say thank you for this cool room. I was thinking as well, listening to everyone is so powerful and fills me with so much. Sitting here with my daughter also fills me with the stories of the things that I'm hearing here. Seeing my sister, Mary Lyons, great-grandmother Mary Lyons, my young relative Heather over there, Ariel, all of you, just mean so much to me, and the power that you bring and the message that you share. The things that we talked about with the extractive industry and the type of genocide that's being impacted in every single community is unnecessary, and that's what I keep feeling so much. You know, when we talk about the genocide that's being practiced on us, and has since the time of the doctrine of discovery, and that guy they called Columbus that came into our territories and began this ugly movement called the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples. It's no accident the way these things are happening. It's very, very purposeful. The manner in which they believe that it is their right to take the land, to rape the women, to steal the children into schools. Now to poison the very air in a new scheme, this thing called carbon trading. As if they can trade it for the breath of a tree or a flower. As if that doesn't go around the world, the globe, and poison us all. As if in Ponca territory, where the extractive industry has a hold so deep and so strong that every Ponca family has multiple cases of cancers, where our children are born, if we get them to birth, with autism, with mercury poisoning, with having to use those little inhalers. These are not accidents. This is deliberate genocide being practiced on us. These are mass murderers. These are serial killers. And there's no way we should sugarcoat it in these halls here. I remember the days we were having a prayer service. My daughter was 2.5 years old. I was carrying my son. And the song that came to me over and over again while I'm sitting here trying to find prayerful ways to approach this was AIM song, American Indian Movement, a power song for red power, for we Indigenous people recognize the time of prophecy. We recognize the time when women's voices come back into the being of being the 50% of the natural energy of the universe. The suppression that has happened against women is part of the crucial problem. We do have the answers. We've lived the answers. Every woman I know knows the issues within her own home, within her own village, within her own homeland, and within the global structure of what needs to happen for us all to be healthy. We are through living with Stockholm Syndrome of identifying with our oppressor. We call out the name of the colonizer in shame. History will remember this moment as the crucial moment of change, when rebalancing will happen. They say in certain territories of Turtle Island, women hold up half the sky. We can hold it all up. We're going to hold it up and we're going to clean it up. We're going to demand change. We are civil society. As a person who grew up in the 60s, I remember a period of time when the Vietnam War was stopped by civil society, by you young people, by all of you young people, taken to the streets and saying, no more, no more, no more, no more. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I remember a period of time moving past that when environmentalism wasn't heard of. Now you are leading the movement. There is change on the way, but only if we're strong, if we're in the streets, if we're in the halls of power, and if we assume the power that naturally belongs to us. And quit giving it away. Quit saying some elected official represents you. Represent yourself. In your homes, begin to gather. Begin to make decisions that are the correct decisions for your home, for your front yard, for your little patio on your apartment. Grow your food and love it. Protect your water and love it. Don't allow the carbon schemes to come in. Stop those pipelines.
Yep.
Allow the oil and gas to live within its natural harmony within Mother Earth. Pray for that too. All of these things are part of natural law. When we walk outside and we're hot, remember natural law is balancing and saying, this is what's happening next, because Mother Earth will purify. She will continue. Don't trick yourself into thinking that we're the protectors, we're the defenders, and we're the saviors of Earth. She's fine. It's us ones that are out of balance, that have to recognize how do we rebalance within ourselves, how do we rebalance within our communities. For us, within the Ponca Nation, because of the terrible impacts of the extractive industry, we have adopted a statute called the Immutable Ponca Rights of Nature, recognizing that we have always understood that we, the human species, are part of nature, not separate from.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense if those guys that are in the federal government of Turtle Island like to have a piece of paper with words on it. Okay, we'll tell you who we are. You will recognize our laws as part of natural law that has a right, an inherent right to exist and will anyway. Whether you do all the harm you choose to do, make every law you choose to make, natural law is in action. We also did a statute on the rights of the sacred rivers in our territory. For the same reason, the immutable Ponca rights of the rivers. The rivers always have their rights. Those that live within her have their rights. And we also recognized within those statutes climate's right to exist in its natural state. These are strategies. These are recognitions of traditional ways that are still ways that can show us that we can live in harmony. We can live in health. We can live in balance. Prayers led us this way. Ceremonies led us this way. But we humans who have gotten things to this point, we have to take responsibility. And we have to do something every minute, every hour, every day, until.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Casey Campornic. And maybe we could show the Ponca video. It looks like we have enough time. Is that possible? Thank you. We're going to just close out our session by the solution aspect again. I think it would be good to see that. Thank you. It's a short video of a project from the territory where Casey comes from, if we can. Thank you. Thank you for your good words.
We Ponca are originally from the northern plains, forcibly removed into this territory in 1877. And this was our permanent way of being. This Mo'ite, this woman's home, this lodge, is a place that hasn't ever existed in this form, in the physical form, in this southern Ponca life.
We had always been taught that at one point in time people are going to look back to those of us who have that memory, that blood memory with this particular piece of the earth to teach you, to guide, to give gentle lessons in good ways about how to reconnect with where you are now.
This whole area around here, just within an acre or two, is going to feed so many. It's going to take care of so many ceremonies will help us to become whole again. It is the lodge that the woman cares for and passes on to her eldest daughter. And that's the way it's always been.
So from the very setting of the poles, which were done in a ceremonial way, to us going back and changing the way that it had originally been planned to be built, with WECAN's support, we were able to do that. It's been a community effort, a family effort to really get it going. We want it to be here for a long time. My mom never saw one here. My grandma never saw one here. And my granddaughter and my grandson will never not know a Ponca Earthen Lodge. It's always going to be part of their history.
There'll be lots of food stored inside the Earthen Lodge, as well as food grown around the Earthen Lodge and medicines as well. So we're excited for all of the cultural reasons, the spiritual reasons, the healing that this lodge is bringing to the Ponca Nation and the surrounding tribes and everyone who's been involved in this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building of the lodge. But it's also going to be a place where we can ensure that people have a place to be for safety and shelter and home during the times that are coming. We've been really honored as the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network to do a lot of research on the different traditional seeds that have been grown in this area and kept by the Ponca Nation for generations. So there'll be raised beds that are right next to the Earthen Lodge. Some plants are actually grown on top of the Earthen Lodge. So this will also be a place where the women can grow their food, grow their medicines, and share them with the community.
These small places of healing and medicine change the whole vibration of those who come in contact and get to come inside and see that there is a way forward. We can live in a good space and be responsible citizens of the earth. The dream is the earth telling us again and instructing us again how to live and how to be in a place that is what they call circular economy, or a reciprocal way of being.
Okay, well that closes out our session. I think that was a good way to end this incredible dialogue with these amazing leaders.
And we thank you all for coming, and let's take on the hallways, take on the streets, take on the financiers, take on the government, take them all on. We're together. Thank you.
Closer.
We're supposed to go just get it.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time.